The time is 5:03. The date is May 25th, and this is a FY22 recommended budget presentation put on by our finance team. And I do know that Councilor Walsh wanted to join us this evening as well, but could not. So I just want to give her that recognition as well. So without further ado, let's just jump right in, and I'll turn it over to TJ, Lindsay, Melanie, and others who might be presenting this evening.
Sounds good. Yeah. Hold on one second, we'll pull up the presentation. We're going to be sharing the screen of the presentation with you. But we did email it out to everybody, so it should be in your email box when you go back and check it. But
okay, thank you, counselors, and everybody who's on the line. TJ and I wanted to start, first of all, counselors, by thanking you for your patience in the last few months. I know that there's been some requests for information that took a little bit longer than normal to turn around and get back to you. Like a lot of people, we've been short-staffed. It's been hard to fill our roster up. So I want to thank you for that. Second thing, I just wanted to introduce our team. We have a couple new faces, so I just wanted to make sure that we recognize everybody on our team. So obviously, TJ and I, we have Melanie, who you all know is the budget director. We have two senior analysts, Chris Frazier, who you may know, he's not going to be here tonight, but we also have a new addition to our team. Sean came over from economic development, so we're excited to have him here. We have two analysts that will probably be familiar to you already, Hamida and Aaron Hand. Aaron's not here, but Hamida's on. Thanks, Hamida. And we have two new analysts who just started, who just started on Monday. I see Talia's here, and we also have a new analyst whose name is Alyssa. So I'm sure that you will be seeing or hearing from them at some point. And I just wanted to thank everybody on our team for all the hard work for the FY22 recommended budget. And we hope to answer any questions you have tonight and review it with you. And I'm ready to get started. All right. So the FY22 recommended budget, here's a snapshot. The total budget is increasing by 3.9%. The city side is increasing by 5.7%. The school department is increasing 2.9% over the FY21 adopted numbers. So just some high-level highlights for the budget. We're adhering to all fiscal sustainability and responsibility requirements. Ongoing funding to address our long-term liabilities. There's no layoffs in this budget. In fact, we did actually pull some personnel that we had offset to grants back onto the general fund for this budget. So you may see an increase in FTEs because of that. We have a continued investment in our public schools. We reestablished the $250,000 for early education. We have a continued commitment to public safety with, as you know, our body-worn camera program. We have upgraded IT infrastructure in the police department. We have a new consolidated dispatch center, added personnel, and we have also increased our shot spotter coverage area this year. And then obviously city services vital to residents and neighborhoods. All libraries are open. Our parks and recreations programming is included in this budget. Summer programming is included in this budget. We continue our sidewalk and street maintenance, our terrace landscaping, and we have added money in this budget for stump removal this year. So our FY22 budget process really started with our multi-year plan, which we sent out to you back in March, I believe. We started, just based on our assumptions, we started with a gap of about $4.4 million. That's generally when we take in conservative revenue estimates, pretty conservative growth, we got to the 14.4. After department requests came back, that gap increased to 21.3, which is normal. We usually expect about a $5 million increase when we get the department requests back. So how did we balance that? How did we solve for that $21 million gap? 3 areas we always look at. Expense decreases, we were able to offset some money to grants. There's a school department grant, the ESSER grant, and the increase to the minimum contribution for the Springfield to the school department was 1.3. We're able to offset that $1.3 million to the ESSER grant this year. We were able to reduce our school transportation projection. Our debt schedule continues to be reduced. Our benefits projection was reduced. And we did reduce about $355,000 of departmental spending based on historical trends. On the revenue side, we did continue to decrease departmental revenue projections. The net effect of that is about 2.6 million. We saw a $1.4 million increase in unrestricted general government aid. We were able to add in some marijuana excise revenue this year. And we did have an increase for Medicaid collections through the school department. For property values, included in the revenue assumptions for this budget is 2.5% growth as allowed by Proposition 2.5, and then $1.2 million in new growth. The last thing that we're going to be reviewing a little bit in this presentation is a one-time funding source, well, really 4-year funding source, but for this budget, $12.1 million of the ARPA funds that will be allocated to the city. We were able to capture in lost revenue according to the Treasury's formula, and we will be including that as a revenue source this year. So just a quick snapshot of revenue sources. 61% comes from state aid, 31% property taxes. That's pretty much what we see every year. 7.2% local receipts, and the 1.6% other that you see, that's that $12.1 million for lost revenue from ARPA. This budget includes no reserves to balance, and that's the 7th year we will be able to balance without the use of reserves. The FY22 recommended budget. So these are some revenue estimation highlights, which I just wanted to point out because lots of times these questions come up. How much MGM money is in the budget? Well, we have $2.5 million for the Community Development Fund, which is not included because that's a grant. We have $2.5 million for the Community Impact Fee, which is built in. We have $13.8 million guaranteed 121A agreement revenue built into the general fund. And for the gross gaming revenue percentage this year, we have $350,000 built in. I talked about the marijuana excise. We have $150 for the medicinal marijuana HCA, and we have $30,000 built in for adult use excise. We also have the ARPA funding, $12.1 million, which again, I'll go over the lost revenue calculation, how we came up with that. And then we have the tax levy, 2.5% growth, $1.2 million to new growth, and then again, no reserves. Okay, so ARPA. The American Rescue Plan Act. So I'm not going to go over everything in this slide because a lot of it you probably already know. The specific section that we're interested in ARPA is the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And that is the part of ARPA which delivers $350 billion to local governments. That money, they want to be used to support the immediate pandemic response, to bring back jobs, to lay down the groundwork for a strong and equitable recovery. Springfield's allocation has decreased a little bit from the estimated $98 million. So the amount that the Treasury released for us is $93.8 million. It's based on a CDBG formula. We anticipate an additional estimated about $30 million of county funding, since Hampden County is not a local form of government providing services. Each community in Hampden County should receive a cut of what would have been budgeted for the county, bringing us to an estimated $123 million. Again, we haven't really heard much about the county funding. We know for sure the $93.8 million is coming to us. You've all heard what it can be used for, COVID-19 mitigation efforts, to address negative economic impacts, to replace lost public sector revenue, to provide premium pay for essential workers, and investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. I have the lost public sector revenue highlighted there because that's really the only point in this presentation that we talk about the ARPA funding. So I just wanted to highlight that we're going to be going over that piece of it today. Exclusions for ARPA funding are any money into the pension fund, and directly or indirectly offsetting any reduction in tax revenue. Again, here are the main goals of ARPA. I talked about them a little bit already, but again, one of the main goals is to replace local government revenue lost due to COVID-19. So the act allows for local governments facing budget shortfalls to use payments from the Fiscal Recovery Fund to avoid cuts to government services, which means they're allowing us to use some of this money based on a calculation to find out what they consider what would be our quote unquote lost revenue, and use it to apply to any budget shortfalls, which you saw was the $12.1 million budget gap. Now that formula is included in the interim final rule issued by the Treasury. It's the calculation you see under one of the bullets there, which says counterfactual revenue formula. That's what it's called. And essentially what it is using FY19 actuals, increasing those actuals by an inflation factor explained through the Treasury, and then the variance between that and calendar year 2020 actuals. So any variance to the negative is considered lost revenue. Those totals that we calculated come up to 12.1 million. And the drivers there are departmental fees, earnings on investments, motor vehicle excise, permits, tax liens redeemed, hotel, meals tax, and departmental fines. So those are the drivers of that $12.1 million. Now for the expense overview. Again, the school department, over 60% of our budget, and then our other budget drivers are our employee benefits and public safety. Attached here is our schedule of appropriations, the totals, which the council will vote on soon, hopefully. That's included in your budget packet that we sent out. And then finally, we just have some budget highlights. We wanted to make sure that we talk about everything included in the budget, anything new. We don't have a lot of new things included in this budget, and just really address our continued funding for services, anything new that we added, and some highlights from some of the departments. And that's all we have for you today.
Thank you, Lindsay. First, before we jump into questions from the council, as we touched base on before, this book right here used to probably be 10 times the amount of pages that we're used to. So can you perhaps just speak to, and I know it has something to do with ARPA, but feel free to speak to that, please.
Sure. Okay. Same thing happened last year, Counselor, and thanks for bringing that up. We aren't trying to be more green. I would love that to be the answer, but it's not. So you have an abbreviated budget document this year, much like you did last year. Last year, we were waiting for the state budget to be released in order for us to balance. This year, we were waiting for the ARPA guidance to be released in order for us to figure out how to balance. That was released last Monday. So we wanted to get it into your hands as soon as we possibly could, So we included all the information we included last year, and we provided this document. We're happy to share any other information you need, but the larger document will be issued after the budget is adopted, and all that information will be included in the adopted budget document.
All right, appreciate that
In
context.
addition to that, we've had issues with staffing, as you probably heard about everyone else across the Commonwealth from the country. We've had 3 analysts working on what would it be 5 or 6 analysts worth of work. And so by the time, in the interest of time, we got to do an abbreviated budget, understanding that we will be hiring additional folks when things get better. And now we got 2 of them on, but they started this week.
All right, TJ and Lindsay, thank you. I will pass this over to Councilor Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Lindsay, for the overview and the highlight, and thank you for the call earlier regarding the 12.1 million in lost revenue that we can recap from the general fund money only. Waiting to hear about the enterprise fund, which you'll let us know when you have that information to see if we can recap some of that funding as well. So my question, if you could go back to the MGM screen, the one that you said always is a question, because once again, I have one.
Sure. So I have it here. Do you want me to pull it up, or?
Yes, I would like you to pull it up so that the counselors are versed on what I'm talking about.
All right. Just give me 1 second.
And so that 2.5 million community development fund, it says non-general fund grant, current balance is 7.2 million. So are you saying 2.5 million of that was used to balance the budget?
No, I just brought that up because it's often a question. This is not included in the budget. It cannot be included in the budget. It's a grant.
So none of the MGM funds are included in the budget to balance it?
Just that $2.5 million community development fund grant is not included. The rest are.
The rest are. So the full amount of the 13.8, the full amount of the 2.5, and the full amount of the 350 are included to balance the budget?
Yes.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so currently we're holding on to $7.2 million of community development fund. And we have talked about this last year when it was 4-point-something million. So we're talking about it again. And sooner than later, we should get a committee together, TJ, so we can figure out what is going to happen with these funds. There are a lot of needs in the city of Springfield. One of them that you guys know I am very passionate about is combating gun violence. And so that is going to be a discussion, but we need to do this sooner than later. And I know a lot has been going on. You guys have been working hard with COVID and everything. And so I really appreciate all the hard work that you've been doing. But if we could get this going, TJ, I would love to do this sooner than later. I will also ask to be on the committee once again when we review this fund, because we have 7.2 million, probably a little bit less, because I know some goes to the read right now, or read aloud program and some other things, but it's close to 7 million in there. So I just wanted to bring that point up again, and hopefully, you know, once this budget season is over, we could get to you that meeting and doing something with these funds.
And Councilor Whitfield, if I could just say, the read right now, the only money we spent out of this fund is what we brought to City Council. That was read right now for 1 year. So now the read right now program is built into the general fund.
Okay, that's great to know, Lindsay. So that means we have a lot of funds here that we could be doing great work in the community. So let's just figure out how we're going to get that done.
Thank you, Councilor.
That's the only point that I had. Outside of, there was an ask from Pioneer Valley Project for $250,000 to go towards a crisis team. And I'm not saying that exactly right, but that is something else that I would like to discuss. And for the rest of the American Recovery Plan Act funds, I will be setting up a finance meeting next week. And because there's other pockets of money, like I guess CDBG funds and other pockets of money that can be used. This right here is just specifically to one pocket of funds, which are for the revenue piece. And so we should get down to the nitty gritty and see what else we have out there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
For raising that, Councilor Letterman.
Thanks so much, Mr. President, TJ and Lindsay, and your team for all your work thus far. And I'm looking forward to continuing to dig into it. I guess the question I have today is about the American Rescue Plan funds. So the proposal here is to use 12.1 as our lost revenue number for balancing this year. When do we anticipate actually having these funds in hand?
So statutorily, it was supposed to be here on May 10th. 49.8 million is what we expect to be wired to us any day now. Then we'll be bringing it to the council for acceptance. I'll probably be bringing the full 93.8 million to the council for acceptance, just because that's what the the federal award was, and asking the council to allow us to accept it.
Now, I think, and that leads me to my second question. So this is a pretty substantial amount of money. I mean, kind of, almost unprecedented. I think tornado recovery was a very significant amount of federal money, but that's going to be coming in one chunk. So when you bring this, will you be bringing it for acceptance and appropriation, or do you anticipate rolling out appropriation of the funds over a longer period of time?
So we still are probably rolling out appropriations over a longer period of time, because I read through the 150 pages of regulations numerous times. We're still asking a lot of clarifying questions through the Mass Municipal Association, the National League of Cities, Congressman Neal's office, because there's a lot of, I wouldn't say contradictory, but it's not as clear and cut as we'd like. The only thing that's clear and cut was the revenue piece, because they actually gave us the formula. And we know they want us to do economic development, job creation, housing, equity. We know that all that stuff is contained in there. We just want to make sure that when we come and spend it, it's going to be where they can't claw it back or recoup it.
For sure. And yeah, and I mean, I think that's what I would want to see is that way too. Everybody's at the table. And so if you bring the total amount forward, then we would be granting the 12.1 under the budget, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then the last question on that is relative to the county money. I had heard there was some movement by the state to try to kind of push some of the county areas where county government has been abolished to kind of allow them to sweep that money back at their level. Have you heard anything about that? And if that's true, what are we doing to combat the state from trying to sweep that county money into their coffers?
So I haven't heard that directly for the rescue plan dollars. That is exactly what happened for the CARES money that came out. You may recall Plymouth County was the one that said, we're not going to give it back to the state. We're going to keep it ourselves and spend it ourselves. Right now, there's a huge push at the state level, at the municipal level, and cities and towns with the MMA, that every town get entitled to their own money. And no disrespect to the state, but they've kind of muddied the waters a lot with the CARES money and added more strings than we needed to recover from the pandemic.
All right, you will just be aware of that. I just heard that in an informal conversation with an official in a different city, and they were concerned about it. So hopefully that's not the case, and we will see that county money come easily. But if there's a situation where we need to get the municipalities together, I know you guys will be on top of that, but I just wanted to see where we were at. So those are my questions for now. I'll certainly have more later, both on the American Rescue Act and the general budget. But thank you for the presentation today.
Thank you, Councilor Letterman. Councilor Allen.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President, and thanks TJ and Lindsay and your team for getting this to us. Appreciate it. First question is the difference between the 94 million and the 124 million in the American Rescue Plan you said we're gonna get 94, but it's a possibility it will be in 124. What is that? Is that the county thing we were just talking about, or?
That's the county money we were just talking about. So
That's a county, oh, I see it here. Okay, gotcha. 29.7 abolish county funding. Okay. So we know we got the 94. Okay. Well, skipping subjects from that to just the general doing the budget every year. What was your biggest challenge this year, and what's the biggest difference, if you will, that we should be looking for in terms of revenue or expense that was different this year or bigger this year?
The biggest challenge for FY22 was understanding how much lost revenue they were going to allow us to use to balance the budget. As you probably are aware, we're down about $9.5 million in revenue from the start of COVID of just variable revenue, and we've spent over $40 million for the expenses. So we wanted to make sure that the calculations tied up to what we had. And always the stuff that the challenge would be the pension, making sure we're funding it at 9% or more, health insurance, all the non-discretionary stuff that tends to grow quicker than inflation or than the Prop 2.5 allows.
And could you give an example of lost revenue, just, one item of money we expected that we didn't get as a result of COVID?
Sure, I can give you an example. So say,
This is it here. Okay, gotcha. All right.
so I'll give you examples of motor vehicle excise. So in FY19, the city, this is example, the city brought in $100,000 of motor vehicle excise. So we would use that number, that's our FY19 actual. We would apply the Treasury's inflation adjustment. And so say after we apply the inflation adjustment, it's $106,000. That is our counterfactual revenue. We compare that number to our calendar year 2020 actuals and say we got, again, only $100,000. Same thing as FY19. What did I say? $6,000? Yeah. So $6,000, the variance between those two numbers, $6,000 would be the amount that we can consider lost revenue.
Okay. And okay, that's great. Just level setting here so I understand where to look. Have you included open, what do we call it? Open positions or open requisitions in this budget?
Yeah, we fully funded all vacancies. There's no impact on core services. That was kind of a big deal to make sure that we maintain the level of services we've had. We added in stump grinding because we heard outcry from the public that, hey, we cut a dead tree down and then we leave a nice stump there to rot away. So we put money in. We haven't figured out if we're going to do a crew, an in-house crew for the stump grinding and get the equipment, or if we're going to do outsource it. But it was kind of the big thing. And we brought back all after school and recreational programming.
And that's great. And on the open positions, how many open positions are in here roughly? It was 15 or 20 a couple of years ago.
Probably about that many. We can get that for another meeting or for send it to you. We look at this all the time.
Okay. So there are some open positions in there.
Yep.
I guess that's it on this round of questions for me. Marcus, thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Allen. I'm not sure if any other councilors have questions or comments, but I did have one. I know it's kind of been a looming topic of discussion with water and sewer. And I know that I believe one of those lines for the ARPA funding kind of clearly stipulated that water, sewer infrastructure and broadband might be included. I was just wondering, I know, of course, their budget hearing is coming up and their budget process is underway. Is there any possibility of this money being put forward to this fiscal year? How active are those conversations?
We haven't had any conversations at all about using ARPA funds to help out of a separate commission, water and sewer commission that have their own ability to get grants and get money. And so I haven't really had any conversation. My conversation was they have access to a $250 million loan that's going to help them offset and do all their capital projects that should, in the end, reduce the cost. to deliver the water.
Okay. I got you. No, I appreciate that. And I guess maybe one other question I have is just in regards to, I look at the second point, the negative economic impacts caused by COVID, including economic harm to workers. Does that give the city the ability to kind of, raise wages at all for those affected by, or is that just kind of supplemental funding?
So that's the stuff we're trying to parse through, is exactly what that means. I know, they talk a lot about small business, households, nonprofits, businesses that have a public utility or public transportation or public benefit, for lack of a better word. So there's a lot of that stuff, but we're really trying to figure out what is it like. What does it look like? How do we get money to the hands of nonprofits? How do we get money to landlords and tenants who need it? Utility assistance, all the stuff that we've been doing, but want to do on a much grander scale.
Right.
But as soon as we get more information, we'll be happy to go through it with everyone. I can send you the 150-page regs if you want to read them. They give some advice, some good advice, but then some other stuff's a little vague. So
Appreciate that. Thank you. I would be happy to actually read that. I prefer in an electronic form, but if that's possible, then.
No, we got to, we'll pull off the website and send it to everybody, just to get a sense. It gives you some good ideas. But one thing that really was troubling, and we're asking clarifying questions for, is the open space and outdoor money. They don't say anything about open space, parks, or recreation, and we think that should be one of the premier things that should have been in the law, so we can invest in parks and whatever it might be to encourage people to get out and social distance and exercise and all that stuff. So we keep pushing back on all of it.
Yeah, no, that's truly important. I think I think the council would appreciate that pushing back, because I know there certainly are a lot of needs in the public parks we do have in the city of Springfield. So are there any other questions from the council at this time, or comments or questions?
I have just one, Marcus, on our approach here, and what our schedule is going to be, and when the committee meetings and voting and all that. It's just a month probably. I think we have a meeting on the 7th and the 21st of June, something like that.
Yeah.
The regular meeting. So
yeah. I'm glad you raised that question. I was going to address it at the end, but I'll address it now. So I've been certainly working with Sue and Kelly on the scheduling of those meetings. The next step after this would be obviously to get the department heads to present their respective budgets. How we did it last year, I think, is actually a good way of doing it, in regards of maybe scheduling 2 meetings and then putting the department heads that makes sense to be together, in the same room for any particular night, together that way. And I think the list currently is organized in that way anyway. So those will be scheduled within certainly the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned for that. And then from there, of course, the mayor would have to present, his budget to the city council. And then following that would be of course, that same night, the vote on the budget, with the expectation that there will be 2 to 3 nights scheduled for that in case we can't finish it the first. So that is currently the plan, Councilor Allen, and the dates will be forthcoming for sure.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I see Councilor Letterman.
Mr. President, I just had a quick unrelated announcement for councilors before we adjourn.
Are there any other questions for any members of the finance team prior to Councilor Letterman? All right, seeing none, Councilor.
Mr. President, thank you for councilors that are attending the virtual town hall, and also for TJ. You should have received an individual login link for the 7 o'clock town hall. So it's not this link because they have it set up as a panelist / audience thing. So you got to log in through the link that came from Focus. The headline should say panelist and then your name. But if you have any questions, just shoot me a text.
I appreciate it. I saw that, so I hope I won't have any issues.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. And people can also feel free to email me directly. Just put my email in the chat. And if you have questions, we can get you the links straight away.
Thank you all.
Great. I'll ask one more.
Any information that any counselors need, just let us know and we'll be happy to provide it.
Appreciate that, TJ. Well, if there are no further questions or comments, I just want to thank the finance team for once again joining us to present the FY22 recommended budget. I'm sure there will certainly be subsequent meetings for the department heads and of course the mayor to present the budget as well in their respective portions. So that information will be forthcoming for counselors as well. But do appreciate all your due diligence, especially in the time coming out of a pandemic where we're seeing the light. I know it was a huge effort to determine where these funds should be allocated to once receiving them. I know that that's no easy task. And certainly wanting to maintain any regulations that were certainly put forth as well. So I just wanted to appreciate and recognize you all for your tremendous work and effort to do that and present to us a smaller packet, but yes.
I'll be there.
Appreciate you all. Thank you. And adjourn at this time.